novels written by women or featuring female protagonists. I'm Claire Bushy, books editor for Rebellious magazine.
And I'm Kate Sykes, freelance fiction editor. We're here in Chicago at the Red Lion Lincoln Square.
Today we're going to talk about The Last Romanov by Dora Levy Mossanen. Mossanen lives in California, but her novel was published by Source Books, which is headquartered in Naperville. The book describes the last days of the doomed Romanovs, Russia's royal family. Darya is the nanny to Alexei, the hemophiliac heir to the throne. She has uncanny powers of resisting aging and healing the sick. When we meet her, she's a spry 104-year-old in 1991. The Soviet Union has collapsed, and she thinks she has finally tracked down Alexei, who she fervently hopes has survived the slaughter that engulfed his family at the end of the Russian Revolution. So, what'd you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is an incredibly compelling story. Obviously, the subject matter is something that's been treated by both in fiction and nonfiction, and for that reason, it was a very compelling read. The author is an incredibly cinematic writer. Her descriptions are very visual, and the book moves along for that reason and is a very visual read. But I think that ultimately it tries to do a little bit too much.
I agree. I think the descriptions were terrific. However, I didn't like the magical realism. I thought that it was out of place in a historical setting.
Yeah, you know, the magical realism was actually a surprise to me. Nothing about the cover of the book, nothing about the description really told me that we were going to encounter that. But for me, it was a pleasant surprise. I thought it worked. I thought that it was one of the more enjoyable aspects of the book, and I thought it was unusual to see a book set in Russia that is in sort of a cold and imperialist culture evoke this thing that's, you know, perhaps not fairly, but usually associated with South American literature.
Totally. Well, I thought, like I said, the descriptions were really beautiful, and so I just want to read a passage from this book that I thought was very evocative. Darya picks up a pebble and tosses it into the depths of the Black Sea, which is not black at all, but blue as heaven. She loves the Crimea with its native pine and sequoia, vineyards that supply the sweetest muscat and headiest champagne, trailing vines of rose and lavender, orchards of peaches and cherries and almonds, and a range of hills that keep the cold northern winds at bay and its handsome populace of Tartars content. Yeah, I really enjoyed those parts of the book.
I agree. As I said, you know, she's really a wonderful wordsmith, and she drops you right into the setting in a way that is incredibly specific and very lavish. I do think that it gets to be a little bit too lavish at times.
Yeah, that sort of brings up the question, does this book rebel?
Yeah, does the book rebel? I think that it's difficult to say that this book rebels when it takes a negative view of a rebellion.
Yes, I felt like this book was constantly asking me to sympathize with the Romanovs, and you know, I do up to a point. Obviously, no one deserves to be murdered with their children in a basement. However, these people were autocrats. They had no intention of giving up their power, and ultimately that limits how sorry I am able to feel for them.
And I think the description adds to that problem, because I don't think there's 4 pages that go by without some reference to the bejeweled costuming and the Fabergé eggs and all that. And all of that is lovely and it's an important part of the setting, but I think in this case it served to undermine the empathy that we feel for the characters.
Yes. Well, this has been Rebellious Books. We'll be here next month talking about another title. If you think that should be one of yours or your publisher here in Chicago, you can get more information about how to submit your book for consideration for review at rebelliousmagazine.com. Until then, remember, rebellious women read books.